Hi, I'm David Hardy, and in this video I'm going to be testing out a cheap Chinese SSD, and in the process I'm also going to be testing it against a Samsung EVO 860. Okay, so what it is, I've come across these drives made by a company called Oyunkey, I think, and I'm awfully sorry to the manufacturer if I've just absolutely slaughtered the name of your company, but it's a bit of a weird name. Okay, so this Oyunkey, as I'm going to call it, is a cheap Chinese SSD. Now what it is, I was just looking for something as basic storage for like video files and such, so I thought to myself, well, it doesn't need to be expensive and dead fast, as long as it's got a decent speed. Anyway, so I've got hold of one of these, and to say that I'm surprised would be an understatement. So what I'm going to do here is just cut away to some images of the drive and whatnot, and me unboxing it, I suppose, and also go through some of the tech stuff about the drive and these tests that I'm about to do. This particular one is 240GB in size. It has a SATA 3 connection, which is 6 gigabits. The form factor on this is 2.5 inch. It's an all aluminium case, which stays really cool even under heavy load. Now I'm not going to go into the read and write speeds on this from the specifications by the manufacturer, because I will show you these in practice as I do it now. It has a boot time of 12 seconds as far as the manufacturer is concerned, but I will be testing for that. It's also got 3D NAND technology as well, for all those who want to kind of know about them type of things. And maybe another important thing here is that it's got a 3-year warranty as well. So obviously Oyunkey seem to be fairly confident that this drive is going to work. And the machine that I'm going to be doing the testing with has got a Z97 motherboard on it. It's got an Intel i7-4790K processor and 8 gigabytes of RAM, all sufficiently good enough to do these type of tests with. And the two types of drives that I'm going to be using in this are going to be the Samsung 860 EVOs, and also for my boot drive I'm using a Sandisk X300 M.2 SATA. Okay, so with that kind of basic technical stuff out the way with, let's jump into the test. Now the thing is, it's quite long. The thing was, I'd actually intended on this being one of them quickie for Dave videos, but as it was, when I started testing the drive, I was just that impressed with it. I thought, no Dave, you've got to make a really long boring video about this drive, because that'll really help a lot of people. Anyway, so here we go with the test, and I'll come back with some summary stuff at the end, and also the last test as well, which is very interesting. Okay, so for the first test, what I'm going to do here is a synthetic benchmark, and I'm using Crystal Disk Mark 6 to do this. Now I've left this set up exactly as it would be on install, because I've literally just installed it. Okay, so I'm going to run these. I will kind of speed these through, because all we're interested in is the end result. We don't really need to see how long it takes to do this. So at the moment I'm on my C drive, okay, which is my boot drive, which is the Sandisk. So let me start that test. Okay, so there's the results then for the Windows boot SSD, which is the Sandisk. Now what I'll do, I shall get on to the D drive, and this is one of the Samsungs, so let me get on with that. So there's the results for the first Samsung. Now let's select the second Samsung and let's try that one. So with the second of the Samsungs now completed, let us try our Oyunkey drive and let's see what that does. And with the results in for the Oyunkey drive, let's see what these all look like stacked up side by side. Okay, so looking at the results side by side, as it were, if we look at the two Samsungs, which are basically going to be our test bench here anyway, what it is, they look fairly much the same. There's very little difference between them in like reality. And then if we go and have a look at the Sandisk here, that's pretty much looks like it's probably all okay, with maybe this result here being questionable. And then once we get back down to the Oyunkey, this actually looks like it's good, and then you look at some of the results and you think, maybe is it actually that good? So what's really going on with that? Well, what it is, I don't necessarily put too much stock into like these synthetics, because in real world use you tend to find that things are fairly much different sometimes than what the synthetics may actually say. So what I'm going to do now is switch over and go into a different test scenario, which in my opinion is a more of a real world test, and is actually probably more suited to people like myself who actually do a lot of stuff with video files or picture files and such, who are just used to like shoving large amounts of data about. So what I'm going to do here for the practical example of how these drives perform is I'm going to take a folder with a bunch of files in it, and I'm going to copy it to and fro, and we'll keep an eye on exactly what's going on when it's doing the data transferring. So the first disk here, the D drive, is actually a Samsung EVO 860-500GB, and the E drive here is also the same to Samsung EVO 860-500GB, and here is the Oyunkey drive. Now what it is, I've just freshly formatted that. All three drives are being formatted by Windows itself to its standard parameters for NTFS, so it's like for like here as far as the formatting of the drives is concerned. Now the folder that I'm going to copy is this one. Now inside this folder we have a mixture of files which add up to just over 15 gigabytes. There's 134 of them, and they're in 28 different folders as well. Now in there's a combination of relatively small files and relatively large files. This is basically video data and such, so there's going to be video files in there, text files, graphic files and such. So what we'll do, we'll just get straight on and start copying and observing what goes on here. So I'm going to go from drive E to drive D, which is Samsung to Samsung. So we'll see exactly what goes on here. Now of course these Samsungs are, you know, the kind of top end drives. They may not be the absolute fastest SATA drives, but they are the best combination of speed and like kind of like robustness as far as I'm concerned. I've always had great success with Samsung drives. As we can see here, going from E to D, we're kind of, I don't know, what are we? I'd say average 450. It's peaking up to 470 there, 480 a little bit, but then it'll drop down a little bit below 450 at points. In fact, I'd say 460 to be fair to that. Okay, so what we've done there, we've tested the read speed of E and the write speed of D. So what we'll do the reverse. I'm just going to retitle this and put another Z on the end. The reason for the Z's on the end is just to denote it from the original folder that it had come from. So what I'll do, I'll go back. So this time we're going to be going from D to E, so Samsung to Samsung, but the other way around. Okay, and what we should see here is a fairly similar result. Okay, so what we're doing here, we've peaked up to 480. Actually, that seemed to be sustaining more around. Oh, it's dropped right down. Oh dear. Right, okay. All right, so that's dropped right down to about 320, 330. All right, well, that's shown a bit of a difference somewhere along the line here between the two Samsungs, although they are the same drives. Okay, well, that's a little bit surprising. So going back from D to E, I'd say we were only averaging maybe 350 to be fair. Okay, so there's the results for that. I'm not going to get into it right now. So what we're going to do now is test each of the two Samsungs going to the Oyunkey. So we'll do D first. So this is going to be D reading and H writing. So we're now testing the write speed of the Oyunkey from the first Samsung. Okay, now, all right, that's that's very surprising. Right, okay, let's see if that drops any further. Right, it's dropping a little bit. I'm going to be very fair here, and oh, that's gone up. I think it'd be fair to say that that's peaking up to over 460. It's gone down at points to 430. Right, I would be very fair to say 440 in its writing from D, which was actually faster than what D was to E, which was Samsung to Samsung. That's mad. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to copy E to H. So again, sorry, it's the same folder name. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to retitle the folder again. So I'll put another Z on the end. Now I'm going to copy. So again, this is the second Samsung going to the Oyunkey. Let's see if we see similar results. Okay. Oh, 490. Right, I don't expect it to sustain anything like that all the way through the test, but that's nuts. Okay, you clearly seen there. Oh, it's took a dive. All right. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's come back up again. Right. Okay, look, it took a slight dive part way through, but it peaked at 490, and I know that's just kind of like a burst rate and stuff, but it's hovering between. It's dropped again. Let's see if it goes back up. It's going back up. Okay, listen, I'm going to say that was, again, roughly 440, thereabouts, between its highest peak, which is obviously a burst, but them low peaks or them low troughs, they were only like minor troughs as well. I would say that folder there copied fairly much the same kind of data rate as what the first one does. So I'm saying here, and I think it's very fair, the Oyunkey is writing at about 440 megabytes a second on average between the two Samsungs reading back to it. Okay, so that's a bit mad. Right, now let me just delete these folders here off the two Samsungs, and let me just clear the bin a second. Now what I'm going to do is test the read speed of the Oyunkey by sending these folders back to the Samsungs. So Oyunkey back to Samsung 1, as it were. So now what we're testing here is the read speed of the Oyunkey, but as we already seen before, the D drive, or Samsung 1 I'll call it, that just didn't seem to be performing the same as Samsung 2 or Drive E. Okay, so the Oyunkey reading seems to be a little bit haphazard, although, let's see. Okay, look, it's sustaining there a read speed on average of 440. It's took a dip again. Okay, let's see if it's come back up again. Right. Okay, what I'm going to say there, I would be safe in saying 400 megabytes read speed back to Samsung 1, which is faster than what Samsung 1 was doing, I believe, from Samsung 2. So what I'll do this folder to Samsung 2. So what we're doing now is testing read speed from the Oyunkey to Samsung 2. Okay, so straight away we've fairly much gone over 400. Right, it's dipping again. I'd say it's going to go back up. It's going back up, but that's now peaked up to 480. Right, it's very obvious here that the caching system inside the Oyunkey isn't quite as good as the Samsungs, but you know what? These read and write speeds on the Oyunkey are definitely sustaining better or averaging better than Samsung 1. Samsung 2, on the other hand, you know, it's only I'd say marginally below, to be honest, on averages. Now it's sustained there at 320. Okay, so between its peaks there and its troughs, it's gone down, it'll come back up again. Yeah, I'd say it was a bit slower. I'd say give it 360 maybe average across that read speed back to Samsung 2. Okay, so far there, I would say on average the Oyunkey is actually better than Samsung 1 and not as good as Samsung 2, although Samsung 1 and 2 are both the exact same type of drives. Now, just as a little finish to the test here, or the actual real world physical test, I'm going to do the same thing, but this time what I'm going to do, I'll do it to my C drive. Now my C drive is also doing other activities, so it's going to be hampered a little bit because of what Windows is doing, but not too much. Now what I'm going to do is copy that to the desktop. Now this particular drive is a Sandisk and it's a M.2, but it's only an M.2 SATA, it's not an NVMe. Okay, now, right. Okay, that's gone very low. So that's only, I'd say averaging, well, I'd say 170 as an average so far. Yeah, it's going up and down a fair bit. Now, as we've already identified from the Oyunkey writing or reading to the Samsungs, it's definitely capable of 440 megabytes a second on average. So I would say that this is indicative of the write speed of the Sandisk. I'll have a title anyway, will have popped up by now to let us know the exact model of this Sandisk. Okay, I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about the Sandisk performance here as far as writing is concerned, because like I say, it is the boot drive, it is taking care of various things to do with Windows activity and such. Although, yeah, I'd say that's a little bit disappointing. So what I'm going to do, like I say, I've got to let this go in real time just so we can get a really good feel for what's going on. Plus, I'll send the same folder back again to the Oyunkey, so then we can kind of test to see what the Sandisk is doing as far as its read speed is concerned. Okay, so we're almost to the end here, so just give it a few more seconds and then we'll go back again. Okay, that's nearly done. Okay, we're done there. So what I'm going to do, I'll delete them from the Oyunkey, and then let me just, in case, no, nothing in this recycle bin. Okay, so again, so this is going back to the Oyunkey. So now we're testing the write speed of the Oyunkey and the read speed of the Sandisk. Okay, I'm going to surmise or hazard the guess that this, oh no, it's dipped right down. I was going to say it should be faster. Okay, there we go. That seems a bit better. Right, okay, so what that's saying to me is that the Sandisk is obviously able to read faster than it's writing, and that's even under the stress of running Windows at the same time. That's a very, very respectable read speed from the Sandisk. And also, we've already established that the Oyunkey in bursts is capable of up to 490 megabytes a second. Now, that's just gone up to 450. I'm going to call that 440 again. Okay, so on the basis of that, I'm safely saying that Oyunkey is definitely capable of like your average file movements of going at around I'd say 440, 450 on the write speed. And it's probably there what's similar as well on its read speed as we'd seen with Sandisk 2, because that wasn't a slouch either. Now, I do appreciate that I haven't filled that folder full of tiny files, but for anybody who does video editing or content type creation stuff, then this is going to be typical of what you would see. Indeed, if you were moving around like large folders, maybe with game installs on and such and whatnot, you know, where you've got like the exe files and all the rest of it, you'd probably see similar as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just cut away to the kind of like the end summary of this test. Actually, one last test, I forgot to do it, right, and I'm not going to do this for the other disks, it's not necessary. This is now the Oyunkey reading and writing to itself, so basically just duplicating a folder. So we'll let this run through. It's going to drop down to a certain level and then kind of hang there probably. It's exactly what most drives do. Now, basically what I tend to find with most SSDs is that this particular kind of test will normally result in something close or just below half of the speed that they would normally exhibit when reading and writing data to and from another SSD. With the exception of possibly the Samsungs, them ones, they seem to be able to do the duplication of a folder or file a bit faster than most other SSDs do. In fact, they tend to average, a fair bit more above half of what they normally would do going to and fro. As we can see here with the Oyunkey, it's happily jumping up above 200 to around 230, but it's also just as equally happy dropping down to maybe 170. Okay, well, I'm going to say that is what it's doing there is thereabouts roughly half of what it was doing when it was going to and fro between the Samsungs as well. Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's basically thereabouts a half. Okay, so I think that's definitely concluded all of these kind of practical tests. So now to the end summary. Okay, so there we go then. I mean, I'm actually blown away by this drive. I'm going to be getting more of these because I just think it's ace. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of things that I didn't do during that test. Now, the problem is I am not going to sit there and start doing things like talking about flashing firmwares and optimizing stuff in BIOSes or anything like that. Now, the reason for that is because I've been doing that stuff for decades because I've been system building for a very long time. But the simple matter of the fact is here is people just want to buy a drive and put it in a machine. And don't don't forget, for a lot of people, just simply opening up a machine and putting a drive in is a very taxing process. So the thing that I'm not going to do here is start saying to people, oh yes, and by the way, get this software, do this to the BIOS and flash the drive, because in essence, that is not what people do. So this has been a real world test. Let me just interrupt myself there like a complete tool. I forgot to do the boot up test. Here's the boot up test. So quickly, here's the actual boot time from a cold start, and I'll start the clock just ahead of switching the computer on. Another thing to bear in mind here as well, this is a different machine. It's actually a lower spec machine. It's an i5 Haswell, 8GB of RAM still, but it's an old Dell. Okay, so that was a cold boot scenario, which means that I'm actually powering up the machine right from the start, but I also started the clock slightly ahead of switching the switch. So that's about 22 seconds. And so now let's see how quickly it switches off. Okay, there you go. 6 seconds that took to switch off as well. So that's pretty fast. Now, one last boot test. So for the last test in these booting scenarios, what I've done here, I'm now at the boot prompt on my computer. So I've basically bypassed a fair bit of that like BIOS stuff when it, after it switches on and whatnot. So what I'm going to do here is test it from this point. So I'm going to go down and scroll down to the boot manager. And again, I'll start the clock slightly ahead of it and then click on that. Okay, so this is now basically booting from the Windows point during a proper boot as well. So let's just see how long this takes. This should be slightly less than what it was before as well. Okay, there we see that was roughly 14 seconds. Okay, so back to the end summary. So bottom line then, I think this drive is ace. They also do a whole bunch more of these as well. So what it is, in the descriptions below, I've got links to all their drives on Amazon and whatnot. So if you fancy one, just get onto the links there and go and check them out. Okay, so the last thing that remains for me to say right now is thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.